Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Actor, producer, and director Chris Gaunt is today's guest. Chris will discuss his very busy acting career and several new projects.
Actor and more, Chris Gaunt. Welcome to Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here this morning.
Oh, so nice to have you, Chris. Chris, based on all the projects you're currently involved in, it seems like you have just enough time for this interview and 1 hour to sleep. I figured it out mathematically. So
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah, I heard that before. Many had a personal trainer that used to say that. I wanted to sleep during the personal training. So you know what, Chris? Before we dive into current work, when did you first get the acting bug?
Yeah, good question, Mark. I got the acting bug really young in life. As a young boy, probably 7 or 8 years old, my dad traveled a lot. So I'm one of four, oldest of four children. So my dad was on the road a lot. So when he'd come back, usually late Thursday night or Friday, I couldn't wait to do a couple of things. One would be to dive into a movie. So we'd go to the movies as a family. And I loved films as a little boy. It was a great chance to escape for a few hours in the theater, but also a great chance to reconnect with my family, particularly my dad, my mom, and my two sisters and little brother. And then we also would talk about films, endlessly after we saw them. We'd revisit the film as well as good television. So it was one of those fond memories that I have as a little boy that's carried me on through adulthood. And now many, many years later, I'm still obsessed with film work and really good television.
Well, so I know you do a lot of film work besides acting, and I want to get into that a little bit later. But what films did you see when you were younger with your family?
Oh my gosh. I think for me, the films that struck a chord were really good dramas with a sports angle. I mean, I was obsessed not only with film and good television, but also with sports. So wanted to, like a lot of probably young kids, I can only speak for myself, but I wanted to be a professional athlete, and that obviously didn't work out. But so, I mean, I remember, talking and seeing all the Rockies. So anything that had to do with sports stories. I remember the Brian Piccolo story as a really, really little boy. And I remember crying when, Brian Piccolo was at the bedside of Gale Sayers as he passed away. Two teammates. It was just so moving. And I thought James Caan did such a great job, as well as all the other actors in that film. And I remember, bawling like a little kid because I was a very small, young little boy. And that, I think, is the first sports movie where it not only was sports minded with kind of as a backdrop, but it was a very intense emotional drama as well. That, Rocky, and then countless other movies that combined drama with sports. And then it just merged into something where it was more action related and drama with really solid acting, solid directing, solid cinematography, where you could really get lost for, an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long the movie was.
Oh, for sure. And that resonates with me selfishly because I was a huge Rocky fan. But it's amazing how many years that franchise lasted because I saw it when I lived in Yonkers, New York in the 70s. And then I saw it as an usher in my, 20s. I worked as an usher in the movie theater. Then as an adult, the Rocky Balboa, all the later ones. But big crossover, people don't know about that. Stallone was offered $125,000 and $250,000, and he wouldn't sell it without him starring in it. But what a crossover, what a coincidence, because James Caan was the one that the studios wanted for the part of Rocky. So I got to tell you, I'm a baby like my mother anyway when it comes to movies, but terms of endearment and Brian's song, if you can't cry at those, you're not a human. So
Brian, both films, great acting, great directing, great storylines that really tug at the heart. And back to the Rocky piece, I mean, you think about Sylvester Stallone and his stick-to-itiveness, and I think about him all the time. Mm-hmm. Don't settle. He got that offer. He was, I think, at the time living very modestly, like in his van, is the definition of living modestly. But he's like, I've been poor before, so I can continue to be poor and I can continue to to live and thrive and strive to do what I want to do. So he didn't compromise on what he wanted to get done. And now, 50 plus years later, the rest is history
Oh, for
with
sure.
all the other things he's been able to do because he stuck to his guns.
Oh,
So,
definitely. And
but
I'm old enough to remember him from The Lords of Flatbush with Henry Winkler.
me
Uh,
too.
he was in, I want to say Bananas, but I could be wrong. But it was a Woody Allen movie where he and two other people, I think it said Punk number one, Punk number two, Punk number three. So he was one of those people who accosted Woody Allen on a subway. So
Yeah.
it's nice talking film with someone who's in film, but it leads me to my next. I don't want to say just an actor. Being an actor or an actress is hard enough. But
Sure.
what drove you to add producer and director to your vast repertoire?
Sure. So I've always been another good question. I've always been really interested in kind of the trifecta or even more. So act, produce, direct, and write. And I've always been interested in the full Monty, all of it. And I thought, I dip my toes in, not slowly, because I never do things slowly, really. I'll dive into the 12-foot end of the pool right away, jump into the deep end and see if I can swim in the acting lane. But as a result of doing some acting work, folks found out about my 32 years of big business experience. I did not look like this. It was very much more parochial. It was much more, short hair. Everyone kind of dressed the same. Although within the context of that parochial business environment, that taught me some really good fundamental lessons on business. And to me, I always underscore this: it is a business. So I acted and loved to act, through auditioning my tail off. But as a result of that, when I got to know producers and the directors and other actors, they'd be like, it seems like you have a decent sense for business given your 30 plus years of business experience. Would you like to come on and help us produce? So I started associate producing, which led to producing, which led to executive producing, which doesn't always mean just the money. So yeah, my lovely wife and I, we do invest in films, which has been terrific. But we also, I help hunt and raise money for films, whether it's pre-production, production, or post-production funding. I love the entire process. So now it's morphed into acting, producing, executive producing, directing, and writing. So that opens the world up. The other piece, selfishly, I bet a little bit for those that have been in this business a while, particularly on the acting side, is it's a tough business. We know that. You can send in 25, that you think are great self-tapes, and maybe you get one callback. Law of averages, right? So to the extent that I can do a better job controlling my own destiny, where I'm throwing my hat in the ring, not only as an actor, but also as the writer, director, and executive producer, great. I mean, it increases the odds of you being able to work and do something that you really find meaningful and want to bring to life on film.
Sure. And an analogy for me is that in college, I went to SUNY Albany. I was not a good athlete, but I did play on our dorm softball team, and I was the catcher. So I'm
Right.
listening to you say you're in every play, so to speak.
Yeah, right.
I didn't love being it, but as a catcher, you're in on every pitch. You can't look the other way, that kind of thing.
Right.
So when it's something that you love, such as directing, that's got to be outstanding. In my former life, I taught for over 32 years. And when I went to grad school for my master's degree and then for a degree in administration, it was interesting because I was a teacher during the day and I was a student at night. And I started to shift a little bit about how I taught and how I
Sure.
learned. So
Yes.
what about acting or what about directing makes you switch a little bit in the other realm? What does an actor make you say as a director? And what does a director kind of teach you as an actor, if that makes sense?
I think for me, and again, I've only been doing this, 6 or 7 years full time, and like you, full time 24/7, right? But you learn a lot when you throw yourself into many projects. You learn a lot, I think, in a very fast way. So for me, acting, I'm learning, or I've learned more as a director, that less is more, particularly on less is more. So if you can bring to life a scene through a glance or a look or a series of looks or emotion, I'd much rather have that than a tremendous amount of dialogue. And that's taken some getting used to and learning. So as a director, I'm looking for those actors that we cast for those roles, finding the best actor for that particular role. Can they do more with the kind of the parameters of less is more? And then as an actor, I'm much more willing to receive and to digest and to try to put into use the feedback that I'm getting from directors that I like and respect and want to work with, not only for the production, but perhaps again and again and again. And being really, that shade is open to receiving their input. And to me, feedback is a gift. I've always thought that way. I thought that way when I was in the business world. And I think particularly it's important not to be closed-minded and think that way when you're on set. Because oftentimes these people know what they're talking about. It's not their first rodeo. They know what they want to see. If you're an actor on the other side and the director is conveying what he or she wants you to do in order to deliver the scene, be receptive to that and open. Use 2 ears and 1 mouth in the way it's positioned on our head, right? So listen more than we speak. Yeah. So I think having the ability to sit in both sides or sit in both chairs and assume both roles has really helped me a lot as it relates to the acting and directing piece. Then producing, I mean, you're really kind of overseeing all of those details, which gives you a really great 5,000 foot and above overview of the project. And then again, writing, very different because you're microscopically involved in everything when you're developing those characters. So you as a writer should know those characters better than anyone else. And as a side note, I live about 40 minutes north of Albany. So I know SUNY Albany really well.
Good. We'll talk about good wing places later. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I went to school in Buffalo, so I know good wing places.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Too much snow for me.
But, yeah.
Yeah. So interestingly, it's almost like being a schizophrenic. You're in a special position, I think. But walk me through, you're sitting in the director's chair now, someone's auditioning, you're producing, someone's auditioning, and now you have to say no to someone, and you've been in that chair, and you've been in that position. So talk to me about the more personal aspect of your job in that role.
Mark, it's really difficult. I mean, having been on the other side, on the acting side for so long and doing, when you're really gunning for things, to me, it's law of averages. So you can put together the best self-tape or the best live audition, think to yourself, wow, I really knocked that out of the park, or geez, I wish I could have done something differently. And then sometimes you get parts that you didn't think you deserve or you would have never gotten. And other times you think you knocked it out of the park, and it's the sound of crickets, as we know from the self-taping or audition process. You don't hear no, you just hear nothing, which is sometimes more debilitating than hearing no. So what I do as a director or producer, if I'm on that side of the fence, is I try to do my best, can't always do it depending on the size of the project, to get back to every actor one way or the other, to let them know, appreciate you auditioning for this, and don't give them maybe 20 minutes of here's why you got it or didn't get it. But for those that did not get it, just a simple callback to reassure them that they're good, that they did a fine job, they put their best foot forward, but for whatever reason, they just weren't right for that particular role. They may be a great actor, but if you have someone in your mind for that role, they just may not be a good fit. So don't take it personally. It's not you necessarily, unless they were unprepared for the audition, they're fumbling and bumbling around. That's different. And that's a lack of preparation, which is a totally different, coaching session, I think. But if they're prepared and did their best, that's all you can do. But I still feel really bad not giving someone the role, but you can't give everyone a part. You can't. It's very finite. And I also think if you're involved in the writing process, directing and producing, often I am now, in your mind, you pretty much know the type of character you want to cast for that particular role. And someone's going to need to be really good or different, put a different spin on it to get you to broaden your horizons to think about them if you haven't thought about them already. Because when you're writing a character, when I write, I know exactly the type of person, because you've lived with that character, that you want to cast in that role, which limits the field, right? It limits the playing field. It even becomes more difficult to secure that position. Even if they knock it out of the park, they may just not be right for that role, but they could be a heck of an actor.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was always a big Reacher fan when the books were out 10, 15 years ago. And when you read it, you're imagining this big guy, and then the movie part goes to Tom Cruise, and who's a phenomenal actor. But and he pulled it off because he's a great actor. But then when the version came on the streaming services, that's the character that I saw in my head as I
There you
was
go.
reading. And you mentioned some things. I like the humanistic end of it, which we don't always hear about. I had director Armand Mastriani on my show a couple of years ago, and he
Nice.
spoke about taking the people off who couldn't make it during the audition, or talking to the actors once they got the part and really connecting with them. But he also told me about some difficult times. And I always bring this up on my shows. I like to talk about the story behind the glory. So what have been some of your biggest challenges in the entertainment business?
How much time do we
That's a
have?
3-hour show.
Yeah. So we know this business isn't easy, right? That's a given. And I'm not one to, cry in my milk about that. It's basically, no use crying over spilt milk, as they say. So it's like you put your best foot forward and you let the chips fall where they may. And I must say, I'm much better at that now than I was, say, 5, 6, 7 years ago, where you're putting your heart out there and you just are struggling with, why didn't I secure that particular role on the acting side? So I think the challenging parts for me now, because I'm doing all four, write, direct, produce, and act, is, an independent film world. It's bringing the story you want to bring to life, knowing typically the things I've worked on have been independent projects where you're always kind of rattling that tin can, for lack of a better expression, trying to round up the money, which is not easy. And it's almost like chicken and egg, because oftentimes if you're greasing the skids and have a distribution interest or deal prior to filming, and or A-list or B-list stars lined up in your production, which is not easy and can be very costly, as we know, then there's a greater likelihood that eyes may be seen, eyes may be interested in watching that project. Again, it's chicken and egg. You have to have the money to be able to secure distribution interest, to be able to secure celebrity or A-list or B-list star interest, because they're extremely busy, they're in demand, and they're not cheap, right? So I think funding projects has always been a challenge. But I keep coming back to, if the writing is really strong and the story is compelling, you can and will find people, and I'm proof of this, with the projects I've worked, you can and will find people that are interested in helping you bring that story to life in a number of different ways. So I think that's challenge number one. Challenge number two is, for me, I think I'm getting a little better at, you just can't take things personally in this business. You can't. You put your best foot forward, whether it's on the acting side or whatever you happen to be doing, and then let the chips fall where they may. If you're putting it out there for the world, and for whatever reason you're not right for that part or that particular position, whether you're producing, writing, acting, or directing, then you've done your absolute best. All you can ask yourself is to give your best every day. And then again, you let it go, take a deep breath, regain your composure, and take another swing at the plate. And I do think it's one of those things, Mark, and you know this, but it's law of averages. The more swings at the plate. And also, I think there is a bit of luck there. It's luck, it's talent, it's law of averages. But I watched an interview with a celebrity recently, a very well-known actor, who said, if you quit, you're guaranteed not to have success.
Right.
If you in there, you may have success, no guarantees. But if you quit, you won't. And however you define success, many of us define success in a million different ways. However you personally define success, but if you bail out and you're a quitter, then you're done, right? You have zero chance of making it in the industry. And that's one thing I pride myself on never doing, whether it was in my relationships, personal relationships, my business relationships, or now this, these four things I'm doing now. I don't quit.
That's great. I mean, that was my father's old saying: "You throw enough mud on the wall, some will stick." So, yeah, yes. So very important. Talking about things that are important besides all the work that you do, I'm beyond impressed with the important work you do. Aren't you a board member and a volunteer for Woofs for Warriors?
Yes, a couple of different 501c3s. Woofs for Warriors is a wonderful organization that I'm privileged to be a board member of and volunteer, where we find dogs for servicemen and women that have served our country, that are massively struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, a host of other psychological and or physical situations that they've dealt with, particularly those that have seen or been a part of live combat. And that's been one of the more rewarding things in my life, just to see how, when a veteran connects with an animal, they may be less likely to do harm to themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Because many of our servicemen and women, end their own life because they just, they're consumed with what they've gone through. Also, I'm actually currently, as we speak, volunteering, so the phone's buzzing, for a nonprofit called North Country Wild Care, where we rescue and rehab wild animals throughout the northern New York area, with the objective and goal of getting them rehab so that we can release those animals into the wild. So I'm huge animal advocate, always have been, huge. And then also, if I can couple that with the humanity aspect or human element of, in this case, with WWOOFs, partnering a dog or dogs with servicemen and women to help better their lives in some way, to me, that's very rewarding and fulfilling.
Well, thank you for that work. Thank you for your service, because that work is just absolutely incredible.
Of course.
And
Love it.
Just about a couple of minutes left. I know, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I know how crazy you are with a multitude of projects at the moment. So can you tell us a little bit about your most recent and current work?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, everyone, if you're into streaming, you can go watch a beautiful psychological thriller, fast-paced, 92 minutes, called Follow Her, which I had the pleasure of first associate producing. Then they bumped me up to be an executive producer. I have a small role in it, which was a blast. It's a female-helmed psychological thriller written by the very talented Danny Barker. She's also the lead female in it. And then also a great actor, Luke Cook, Australian, 6'5", great comedic but dramatic actor in this psychological thriller. And then directed by the very talented multi-Emmy winner, Sylvia Kaminer. We have some great actors in it, like Marc Moses, who's been in a bunch of Oliver Stone movies, Mad Men. He's a really, really strong actor. So that's doing really well. You can stream that now on Paramount Plus and on Showtime and all the other VOD, video on demand outlets. And for me, it's a 4-year labor of love, which has been fantastic to bring that to life. Also, a couple of series that we're working on, The Fledgling, which is fantastic. We just got that accepted. It's a 10-minute sizzle now, but 8 beautifully written episodes. It's a vampire road trip series. And we have that's been accepted to Flickers already, to Sitges in Spain, to FilmQuest this week, Syracuse Film Festival. So we're have a showrunner meeting on that project next week, which is fantastic. We're doing a series called Riding with Pride. So think Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan, but only competitive horseback riding. Really, really well done. That's 6 episodes. We have 1 more episode to film. And then I'm also looking to get a series called Animal Lovers Only. So think ER and Grey's Anatomy, only dealing with real vets, real vet technicians, and real animals coming in. Obviously, it's dramatized. But think ER, Grey's Anatomy, dealing on the human side of pet ownership, the pets going into the ER, and then what happens to those animals and their owners after. So that's a wonderful dramatic series that we're looking to get launched. Currently writing 3 screenplays, and then I've acted in about 10 films in the last year that are either in post-production, or most of them are in post-production now, waiting to get released. So again, I don't rest much by design. That's the way I roll. I love it, and if I could do more, I'd even do more.
I don't know if you could do more unless we expand the day to 28 hours, but that is some incredible stuff going on. But I have a feeling if I ask you a question in 9 months, you'll have the same answer with just different projects
Exactly.
in the works.
Keep the
sure. Yeah. So let me just say quickly to the viewers, don't forget to watch us on E360 TV, available on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. EST, available on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. Remember to follow us on social media. Life Stories with Marc Hoberman is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and of course our YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe. Chris Gaunt, thank you so much for being with us today.
Marc, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm thrilled to be able to meet with you and chat with you. Really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.